Hi, welcome to Heartful Legacy.
In this video, we want to present to you a pivotal person in our journey. That is Hermana Peggy, Sister Peggy, that we met in El Salvador. And we thought it was so important to share with you who this person is, because without her, we're not really sure if our project would be working right now. And she planted us a few seeds for what we're going to be sharing with you in the coming weeks. So to give you a bit of context, just so you understand why she's so important, we were in El Salvador and we were thinking about launching Heartful Legacy. At the time, we didn't know what it was called. We didn't know how we would be doing it. We didn't know what kind of form, where is it, video, and we were struggling a lot. But we felt a pressure to deliver something. And so we really came to a point where we just were being down on ourselves, and we decided to go out from our Airbnb, from where we were staying, and we take a couple of steps out, and we think, why don't we go to the Art Center for Peace? This was one of the places that I wanted to visit.
10 steps away, the Art Center of Peace. And we were like, hey.
We were beside it the whole time.
Synchronicity, that's where we should be.
Yeah, exactly. So as soon as we get there, we feel this immediate sensation of peace. It is so calm. There are beautiful gardens. The architecture is beautiful. And immediately I get the sensation that we should film our introduction video there. And it had become so clear at that moment that, okay, this is where we're going to start. So we had to ask permission from the direction if we could actually use the space. And so when we asked, who do we speak to, we were told we needed to meet with Hermana Peggy. And what happens there? We meet with her, and it's like we understand so deeply why we needed to have this encounter with her. She was so incredibly encouraging towards our project and believes in it in a way that we, at that moment, were not believing in it. So it was really important for us to hear her words.
She was really like, oh, wonderful. I'm so glad you arrived here, because that gives me hope that what I did will be continued, because there's people like you coming to my door. And she was just like, you guys, your project, you'll just do it. It's wonderful. So we connect so much. And hear out why it's so special. Since Canada, we couldn't book the last 2 nights. And we were like, oh, let's see, we will encounter beautiful places and we will go back. We rent a car, and a week before in El Salvador already, we were like, okay, we should book the last 2 days, but we can't,
And even that morning.
And that morning, we're just searching everywhere to book. We cannot book. Okay, so when we saw Miss Peggy that day later on, and we say like, wow, you're such a beautiful person. Can we have an interview with you? And so she says, yeah, of course we can have an interview, but I only can in 2 days. Bam! That's why we couldn't book. It was amazing. Yeah. All those synchronicities was like, okay, you guys should do this project, and okay, let's do the interview. In that interview, she is like, we should share this gift of being human, and bam, our project was born. Heartful Legacy, and the gift of being human is the series, the 9-episode series we will begin next week, where we go deeper on how we can go back inside, so this world can be perceived like a gift again.
We're really excited for you to hear this interview before diving into the series. It is a real treat. She's an incredible person. We hope that you enjoy it just as much as we did.
Thank you, Hermana Peggy. Thank you, the Center of Art and Peace in Suchitoto. See you soon.
Let me introduce myself.
Yeah.
My name is Peggy O'Neill, Hermana Peggy. I'm a sister of charity from New Jersey, but I'm living and talking with you in El Salvador. Suchitoto, that word is a Nahuatl word that means the land of birds and flowers. So this is a beautiful little city with a lot of problems, a lot of victories, and with people that never give up. And so I came in 1987. I'm here a long time, and I did witness the war. But I've learned so much by seeing behaviors of empathy, solidarity, humildad, humility. Forget if I go into Spanish for a word or two. But anyway, I'm happy to meet the both of you. I've been impressed with what you want to do with your lives. I've been hanging on to my life a long time, and I'm so happy that you're coming after me to be able to do what I think is my mission and vision is very similar to yours. Yours very similar to mine. So I'm here to be at your service if I can be of any help. So thank you for coming and asking me to know more about me. We're not hoping to have, professional artists or professional musicians emerge from here, but they might. What we do want to have is a place where young people, and little ones and older ones, so I'm putting in all age categories, where they can find personal peace and build social peace. And they were born, or at least they were surrounded by the stories of refugee camps. They were born during the war, some of them escaping from this country with families, traveling at night, being hunted down by an army of soldiers. Many of them died on the way even. Mothers had sedatives in their water bottles to keep the children from crying. And I know one woman who could not stop the baby's crying, and the poor woman by accident suffocated the baby. Can you imagine that woman's trauma after that experience, trying to save the line of people? She hurt her baby. And so I came here not knowing I would watch people with experiences like that try to heal and be healed. So I came in 1987 with the desire to insert myself into what I was teaching. I was teaching about the theology of liberating, like you're wanting to let people understand the gift of being human, and it's not to be betrayed, or it's not to be without basic things that all persons need, like health care and education and so forth. And because I had been talking about the theology of liberation and liberating systems that keep people. And then I decided, after teaching for 25 years in university and visiting various countries, to insert myself where I would be living alongside of people who were showing me how you do experience resiliency, solidarity that you need. And so I came ignorant of what it means to live with people who have suffered so in large groups. And I still keep talking to myself, what else have I learned from them? And how did how was that shown to me? And so I've been busy for 38 years and building this center the last 20. And we decided to help young people who were, many of them, wrapped up in gang activity because they really were lost. They did do terrible things to others, but terrible things were done to them by not having attention regarding their own trauma and helping their own parents help them, etc. So we decided, after working 15 or so many years, 18, with women who were holding up the world really during the time of the war and post-war, to work with the young people, not with formal education, but helping them to deal with the memories they had. You know, you can't erase memories, and you can't be angry with them your whole life, and you can't forget them. And they're always there, but you have to touch them with tenderness in the sense of that is your personal history, and you really have to accept it and learn how to manage it. And we were going to use the arts to be able to help us help them. And it's been going now for 20 years, and we see a lot of different autoestima. You know, they have a different kind of sense of who they are. You know, I am instead of I have nothing. I have been, you know, sentenced to no options, and they walked around like that. And that's why many of them turn to anyone who would ask them to do anything for a little money. That's how gangs start. People entice you by making you happy that you got $1 for doing something. And I don't have to talk about what that leads to. But what this leads to, we hope, are kids who are sure that the gift of being human is a gift with a lot of things that you have to carry that don't make you happy, but with a lot of victories, and you discover talent. And so the world is your world, and you have to keep remembering. You know, one thing, let me just put in right here quickly. We have karate here. And a lot of people say, why would you have karate in a peace center? And karate is a spiritual exercise for some people, and it's semi-spiritual here in the form of these young people not only learn discipline and how much they can do and what they should do with reverence and revering your own body, you know. You have to realize your body is sacred, and you're learning how to defend it. You're learning how to fight to never fight, because you realize if someone doesn't know they're supposed to not fight with me, I want to defend myself. But I defend myself because I am sacred. I'm the gift of life. My life force is God, the creator. And the person in front of me who I'm not too happy with is also sacred. So I can't touch that which is so sacred. So how do we build a sense of the gift of being human and knowing that has been violated, and that's all right, now we begin to heal those memories of how you were violated, etc., and build self-respect, build a high esteem of yourself, and know that that's what you hope to get from others who you befriend, you know. And how do we make others befriend us as a nation, befriend us as people who are poor? And how do I, whatever language they speak, whatever the colors of their skin, we are all brothers and sisters. We all have that same creative energy. That's that great mystery of the universe. I'm still searching. What metaphors will help me? I'll give you one. This is not mine originally. Ivone Gabara, who is another Catholic sister in Brazil, she says, God is the sap of life, not a sap. God is the sap, the juice, that which is the force of life. You know, so I think we've got to upgrade our concept of God. We had a beautiful medieval concept of God by putting God in the heavens, you know, something high to reach up for. You know, we had a beautiful concept that we had to behave because we hierarchically chose some things that we had to learn not to do and to do. And so God was the judge, the policeman, okay? Had to be a male, in fact, an old white male, you know, in our image. I don't mean to mock that. I mean to put it in ways that look exactly what it is now out of a medieval setting. We can question those things because of quantum physics or just our own maturation. You know, that was my concept of God as a child, but everything in my life has changed since I've been a child. I mean, look at my hair, it's all white. I mean, look at my body, it's got freckles, etc. But again, we have to accept the change of concepts and not be afraid. I mean, if God is love, what do I have to be afraid of? For me to question, how do I image that, you know? So that's what I mean about, I love churches, but I can see why they were built that way, the style of a medieval concept. And that is that heavens are up, and that's what that's why the churches are high, the cathedrals are higher than just little chapels, because that's so much goes on there that's so important. But then when you realize God is the sap of life, the juice, the life force of everything, and that's what quantum physics says. It's some life energy, life force. And the scriptures tell us God is the loving energy, the loving life force, as expressed in behaviors. Like that's how Jesus acted. You know, that's how other good people, my mom and dad, your mom and dads, they were looking and searching.
It's
See, we've
universal.
trespassed on the fullness of God by locking God in a person, in a gender, in a religion, and then say my religion's better than yours. Yeah, I mean, all of those things. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying those were behaviors that are now evolving into, you reinterpret them. They were trying to express what came out of their moment. You know, now we realize creation has not stopped. The universe is an ever expanding universe. So we're not worried too much about all the sins, but if you know it's love, you're going from the positive end now. You know, Adam and Eve, right away we were sinners, and therefore we had the rules. Now, if you go to the creation, this gorgeous universe, this beauty, and stick with that you're being created by this force. And the force of life, anything that has life is the life force of this same energy. So you're talking about the trees and the mountains and the oceans and persons, and we all belong to each other because it is the sap of life of everything, this God. So that changes your concept. You can go into your garden and it kind of be a pequeña chapel because you're thinking about the real presence in bread and wine in the church for Christians. You know, the real presence in the book, or the way you kneel as a Muslim with your head on the ground. I bought a little rug when I was in Peru. It was natural colors and I loved it. And when I got home, I said, what am I going to do with this? You know, where am I going to put it? It wasn't a rug, but it was like carpet material that was woven. And then I said, maybe it could be my prayer rug. And I got down and I got on my knees like Muslims do. And I put my head down on my bedroom floor. And I couldn't believe that position had me kind of like in an upright embryo position. I felt. But so anyway, I started reading the Quran, not the whole thing, but parts of it were so beautiful. We're not in competition. Whose religion is better? What? You know, we're all searching. The search never ends. This mystery of the universe, of human life, and you know, so we keep searching, and we search wherever we are for that real presence. If you look at where is the life force in my dog, I love her. You know, I can say God is not stingy. Everything that has a soul is holy. You know, I mean, it's part of this gift. What you have to do is, you know, contemplate a little more and, you know, not use too many words, but go in and think about who you really are. That's contemplation. And if I really am a personification, a grounding of that infinite being, and I can spread that power of love, why am I not doing it? Or maybe I'm doing it and I don't realize it. Or maybe I can do it more. So I feel that's what's spurring you on, because the news today is just so dreadfully, you know, pessimistic, and wars. And how do we gather in small groups as adults and then devise ways to do our little part of transforming wherever we are and however far that reaches. When I was in the second grade, we could adopt pagan babies. Imagine the language, because we had sisters in China, and they were poor. Not the sisters, but the people in China, and they were helping, and they had like places for them to sleep and schools. Anyway, they had to leave, but they were forced out of China. However, we could help the sisters run the school, but it was $5 to send to help them with food and the clothing for the kids, etc. Well, I went home and told my mother I could adopt a Chinese baby, and for $5. I could say, that's how the sister worded us for little kids to understand it. Anyway, my mother and father thought it was a good idea. I gave my money to the sister, and they said to me, well, we'll have to, you can do little chores. We'll give you up to $5, and for the stars on your paper in the second grade. Okay. And so I had money, and I went in, and the sister said, well, what name would you like to give to your adopted baby? And I said, I have to name the baby? And, yeah, you could name the baby. What name? Oh, Peggy. And she said, okay, you can have the name Peggy. It's not a saint's name. Your saint's name is really Margaret, but if you want Peggy, because that's what they call you. I said, I want Peggy. So anyway, I adopted 4 or 5 babies that whole year in total. And my father said to me, now what are you going to name this one? Because I had named them all Peggy. And so this was going to be the last one. And he said, now Peggy, I think you really should. I said, Daddy, she showed us a map of China. China is so big. There's only 5 Peggies in the whole country. So he said, well, you can call this one Peggy too, But you know what that did to me? That realized I was connected to babies in China. All I knew about them was that they were poor. I knew nothing about politics. It probably was very different when I was a little girl than it is now. I knew nothing about the fact that they were poor, and I wanted to help them. And the sisters were helping me help them. Maybe that's really subconsciously why I wanted to be a sister. I just knew they were kind and loving to people who needed a lot of kindness and loving. I mean, gosh, if you don't have enough to eat, you better have people helping you. And that should be maybe the margin most of the time, It was during the war, and we got on the back of a truck, and we wound up driving, and we saw the reason why we were moving was there was a government force of soldiers coming our way. And they didn't want to stay where they were because the war was on, and they weren't in settled communities. They just kept moving to more safer areas. The soldiers weren't going to kill them, but they'd get information. And you had to be very careful because the kids, they'd say, now who's the leader of? And one kid, my daddy, what's his name? And say the name of it. And they didn't want to give out names, and all that. So anyway, they decided they were going to move. So I had to move with them. We got on the back of 2 large sand trucks where you take the sand from the rivers and you throw it back, and the sides aren't high. And we drove, and then for some reason the first driver went left, and there wasn't a street, and we almost went over an embankment. So we all had to decide, well, we can't move. So then we decided we better look for a place to sleep, and so we went to an area of tall grasses. And I didn't take out my backpack with me. I had my passport, and if military came to question us, I could show them who I was and all that. But I left that on the truck. The woman, I wound up with 2 other women, and one of them had a baby, and she took a basket off the truck. She opened the basket finally to change the baby, clean it, before we would all try to sleep. The first thing she took out was a stack of tortillas. Now, tortillas here are gold. I mean, you have one for every meal. And some men have 5, It's our basic. So I was starving. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. We all awakened at the same time. So that's when she decided to clean the baby. And I almost went like this and grabbed my tortilla. But the woman next to me, she went, oh no, she said, we can't eat your food. She said, you have to feed the baby. We don't know how we'll be walking back tomorrow. And so then I said, oh my God, I'm glad I didn't take one. And the woman with the baby, she had the baby in her arm. And she said, after this gesture, she went like this. She said, oh no, she said, tonight we share our food. Tomorrow we share our hunger. I can't tell you what that did to me. I mean, the definition of solidarity, that's real solidaridad. We are really in it to the end together. We're in it together to bring about peace in Ukraine or Gaza or in the United States. We fight over too many things, for the right reason sometimes and for the wrong reasons other times. So how do we get into solidarity? You know, solidaridad. That's like a tattoo on my mind.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never forget that. I hope I remember that when I'm on my deathbed. You know, I want to bring that with me. Solidaridad. We all belong. There are no strangers. You know, we've got to teach each other that there are no strangers. We do belong to every part of the living elements of this universe. And I've played tricks too. I remember in the war, we were on the bus and we used to come from the capital and stop in a little town called San Martin, and it waited a half hour. Well, the military were usually on the streets, and they were doing their job, and they got on the bus, and they were recruiting, meaning taking to join the army 2 young people. I didn't realize that was going on as it happened. And so this one man said, come on with me, and it was a soldier. The young man had to get off, and then one woman screamed, that's my son. And she ran after, all right, the soldier. Another soldier got on the bus and took another young man, and I started to scream, that's my godson. I knew it couldn't be my son. Anyway, that's my godson. So I ran after him. When we were making so much noise, the 2 soldiers said, okay, keep quiet. I mean, we're in the middle of the street, you know. And he says, look it, I'm telling you, you're lucky. Get back on the bus and keep quiet. So we all got back on the bus. Well, the little kid riding him, and he wasn't a little kid, he was like 19 or 20. So he was sitting next to me, and I put him in there by the window, and he put his hand on my leg here. You know, because we couldn't talk. Because if you're in a war zone, people listen to what you're saying, and you may say things bad about one side. And so anyway, I could feel this kind of going, like, and it was like, I love you to me. I could feel, and then I could feel just 2. And then but I knew he was talking to me and thanking me. I never saw him again. And he got off the bus in Ixtagua, a town before here. But again, you know, I just, the joy that kid will never forget. You know what I mean? Like, that was a peaceful moment for the both of us.
Amazing.
Amazing. You know, what do you do in situations you risk sometimes? And see, I don't have children, and I don't have responsibilities in the same way that I can risk. And sometimes I'm frightened and don't. But again, that's when you start talking to yourself, you know?
You choose either.
With love. Talk
or
with
fear.
yourself with love, too. You know, you just say, well, shit, don't be, you know, pounding your blah, 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 blah. You try again. Art is so transformative because you begin to not just look, but really see. You're not just looking at something, you're seeing the inner meaning. And maybe you're seeing the inner meaning of the universe and human life and what you're looking at. It can be painful to look at it. And maybe you're seeing, oh, human life, why are we so nasty to it? Or it may be beautiful, you know? And young people really need to behold something, not just look at it and run. You know, they can grow into. So do adults. You know, when we talk about gang members, maybe, you know, I want to say, well, what kind of a context did that kid have? Or what did she have as a family? And what did she not have? And what you want to get is to, you know, and art teaches you to look for the context. You know, why that color? Why am I choosing this? Is this okay, teacher? Why did you choose it? Sure it is, if that's what your meaning is. You know, if you have a meaning for choosing it. How do we, you know, we may, oh yeah, it's another war, and we turn the channel. Oh, I've had enough of looking at that. Do we have so much that we finally want to do something different? See, again, that can be positive in all its painfulness, watching war after war, and the same thing is repetitive, but it should accumulate for us to want to find others who want to stamp it out in graceful ways, not using another bomb to stamp it out. I think we really need more silence. Look how wise that animal is. She knows she needs to absorb, you know, and
Being.
yeah, being, that's it. And we do a lot of things to help us escape, you know, drinking too much, smoking when we know it's not good, staying, you know, taking risks that maybe are, when you have responsibilities, I mean, all that, you know, even taking on more classes to study and you can't do well in any of them for yourself because you're too busy doing that little bit in all of them. I mean, not life challenging elements, but even how do we talk to ourselves and know we have to set limits and open new doors and keep enjoying the gift of being human with its decisions that may be hard to do, so they're a little painful, you know, stuff like that. Broken-hearted moments, they can be guides. That's what I've learned this year. That's a new thing for me. You're one of the first two. I'm really publicly saying that. When they murdered those Jesuits, I was brokenhearted. You know, 5 of them were shot down. And when I got that news, I couldn't believe 5 of them. And I knew that became for me a moment where I wanted to even do better. I had to do 5 times more than what I was trying to do. I was here and their presence was in me. You know, that was the real presence of Peggy. You know, you'll be a presence to me forever. You know, I won't always have you on my mind, but when I do, I know what it really is, you know, and why it is that you're still there, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. You know, and you shared personal things with me that you have never let fly away, meaning go away. That they're flying around, but then they come, and there's a moment when you retell it. When I retell these stories, they're new to me, even though they're painful in different ways. But that pain is something that I needed to have, so I keep going, you know, in the name of. We just have to be grateful for who we are and be happy with how we want to be and how we are that most of the time, our longings to be the best we can be at this moment, you know.
This trip was the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful trips, the most intense trips, because we've gone through a lot of things. But one of the people that changed the whole thing, and
Right at the end?
right at the end, when we had all those issues, all those problems into that head and going around and we were panicking, we stumbled into this place and we met this person. This person is amazing, and we need to go to catch her plane, but we need to give her a hug. Un abrazo, por favor.
Ay, qué lado, 2 lados. Oh, este es mío, este es suyo.
Es un...
Corazón con corazón.
Sí.
Bueno.
Gracias para todo. Gracias para todo.
A usted. Dándome energía.
Sí.
Come on. Photographers.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Love your life. Pig out on life. Doing good things. Doing good things.
Oh, you've been such
Discovering your souls. We don't have to save our souls. We have to discover them. Discover the power we have. You know, this love of God. We can do whatever God wants us to do, and we know what God wants us to do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We see you.
Discover your soul. You've got a peek at your soul. Now, you got a little peek. Now you can see it. And help each other see it.
Yes.
I love you both.